But thank you for joining us anyway. Those of you who are maybe new to Teams, if you click on the black bar along the bottom of the screen, a little like toolbar comes up, and there's a speech bubble in there with 2 lines in it. So if you click on there, you've got access to the chat then. So the chat will come up on your right-hand side. And then you can just type any questions in there as we go through, and Gail is going to read them out for me, because I won't be able to see them once I start the PowerPoint. So let me see if I can share my screen. Bear with me a second. Okay, can we see the PowerPoint there?
Yeah, I think so.
Lovely. So it's just saying Nimue phase 2 and 3 on the title.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay. Right, so this evening we're discussing Nimue phase 2 and 3. And I'm Hannah McAndrew. So those of you who've not met me before, I'm a Nimue stockist based down in South Wales. I've had Nimue since just before Sweet Squared took it on. So that's like late 2017. I think I started using it on myself, and wow, it just literally zapped my acne in about 3 weeks. So I've been sold, and I've managed to sustain that result. So obviously clients have seen my own results, and they've bought into the products as well. So I'm pleased to say that at the moment, Nimue is my biggest retailer in the salon, and most of my time is spent now actually treating people's skin. So whether that be facials or skin consultations. Prior to being a beauty therapist, I was a science teacher. So hopefully I'm going to do the theory side of things justice this evening for you. And yeah, I just absolutely love Nimue, and I love teaching online for Sweet Squared. So what are we having a look at tonight then? So we're going to have a little look at tonight on how acids actually work. I know we're talking about all the different types of acids that Nimue are using, like the AAA-HA complex. We'll have a little look at how the acids work this evening. Then we'll recap phase 1, so things like concentration of acids in phase 1, what pH is it, what clients expect to see on phase 1. So just a very quick recap on that, because obviously I'm aware that we're all stockists and we're probably all working with phase 1 already. And we're going to have a look at phase 2, so concentration, pH and different products. So since I've actually delivered this PowerPoint last, we've had new phase 2 products launching, so I'm going to go through those tonight as well. And then, oh, that should say phase 3 products at the end there. So just a very quick run through of phase 3 at the end. So remember, as we go through, if you've got any questions, please pop them into the chat for me. So how do acids work then? So those of you who've done some of the more advanced masterclasses with me on the different peels that we do will have seen this slide before, but I'll go through it again. So nice to always recap. So what is an acid to start with? So how an acid is, I like to describe this as how an acid is actually made. So if you were to make an acid in a lab, it would come as a solid powder initially. So whether that's glycolic acid or citric acid, it comes as a powder. And if you were to zoom in on one particle of that powder, it's got 2 parts. So it's got the main kind of body of the acid, which is represented by the yellow circle there. And then attached to that then is your little yellow circle, which is a hydrogen ion or a proton, some people call it, or some people call it a H+. I like to call it H+. And they're stuck together. So one molecule is the yellow part and the red part. When you then dissolve that in water, depending on what type of acid it is, you'll get the red and the yellow splitting away from each other, almost like a bit like dissolving. Dissolving is not really the right term to use, but that's how I like to imagine it. So some of the red protons or the H pluses will actually come off the main body of the acid. And that's what basically makes it acidic. So the more protons or H plus are in water, the more acidic something is. So it's the H plus that give it the power, if you like, and the activity. And that dictates then something called pH. So hopefully you've all seen the pH scale. So the more H's are in that water solution, the more acidic something is, or the stronger the acid then. So pH, it says at the bottom, this stands for potential hydrogens, the number of free hydrogen ions. So hopefully I'm not being too sciencey here. So say, for example, I dissolved lots and lots and lots of that particular powder in water. I'm obviously going to have more H's, and therefore the pH is going to be lower. So like a pH 1, for example, you've got on the slide here is stomach acid. So that's super, super strong. The pH of skin is around about a 5, between 4 and a 5 actually. So the skin is the pH between a tomato and a coffee. So that's how much free hydrogen is in the skin naturally. So the skin is slightly acidic naturally, which is quite useful for us to know, because anything that is, more acidic is almost better for the skin then, which is why we use acids. If you're putting something that's quite alkaline onto somebody's skin, you are going to disturb that natural pH. And the skin can become quite sensitive and quite dry. So, for example, if people are using soap, which is a pH 12, it's going to, it's not the same, it's nowhere near the same pH as the skin. It's really going to strip the skin of those H pluses that are naturally found on the surface of the skin. Do we have any questions so far?
Nothing so far.
Okay, so I'm aware that might be a little bit, if you've never, been taught this before, it might be a little bit mind-blowing. So what tells you how many H pluses are going to come off in that water is, obviously I can put more powder in, so I can achieve a lower pH that way. So as the concentration goes up, generally the pH is going to go down. But also it's the type of acids. So some acids more easily separate in water than others. So we call those the stronger acids. So things like your battery acids, they would be strong acids because they split up more easily in water, whereas things like vinegar are quite weak because they don't tend to split so much. So if I was trying to make vinegar here and I'm adding powder into water, there's only so much I can add in because it just naturally doesn't like to split up. So we call vinegar a weak acid. So there's only a certain pH I could ever achieve with vinegar. And weirdly, and interesting in fact, some people use vinegar, don't they, on their feet to soak their feet and to nibble away all the dead skin. So that's like a form of a skin peel. So that's quite interesting. So why is it so important with pH? I've already said the pH of the skin is around 5. So we've got 4.5 to 5.5 there. So if you look at the skin cells here, so this is just assuming that we've got a cross section of the epidermis here. So you've got your grey skin cells. And on the top of the skin is the acid mantle. So hopefully we know this already. So the acid mantle is there naturally. It's a mix of sebum and sweat. So when sebum and sweat come out of the glands that are in the skin, it just makes a layer over the top of the skin. And that layer is supposed to be there. It's supposed to be there to protect the skin. It functions as like an antimicrobial, so any kind of viruses or fungi or anything landing on the skin, it's going to kill off those because the pH is slightly acidic. And also, like I said before, that is just the pH that the skin is naturally, so we want to try and keep our products around that pH as well. But what's interesting is, say you've got all these lovely H pluses along here and also in between all of the skin cells inside the skin's natural barrier or its natural cement. If you're going to go and put some soap on top of that, all of those H pluses on the top, they're going to come off. And also what's going to happen then is these ones are going to travel upwards to replace what's been lost. You're also, it's not just a case of disturbing the top layer, it eventually will affect the whole skin. If you're having soap on it every day, for example, that's why we start then to see things like impaired barrier sensitivity, dryness, dehydration on the skin as well. So there we go. So what affects the pH then of a solution or a skin product? So as I said, the concentration of the acid. So how much of that acid are we actually putting into a product when we make it? And we'll look at what Nimue use a little bit later. The type of acid, so that's whether you're dissolving an AHA or a PHA. So PHAs are quite weak. We use PHAs in the interactive range because they don't split so much in the water. So you're never going to achieve a super acidic solution with the PHA. It's always going to be quite gentle. And we call that the pKa of the acid. So the pKa is just a scientific term for how likely you are for those H pluses to come off in water. So PHAs are quite gentle, AHAs are a little bit stronger. And then there's something called a buffer then. So Nimue use buffers in their products, which I'm pleased to say, just some of the cheaper brands that are acidic based don't. So buffers basically maintain the pH. So if you can imagine, if I'm making a product and I want to dissolve some glycolic acid in some water to make like a glycolic toner, for example, okay, I could just literally just do that, just put some glycolic acid in water, maybe there's some preservatives in there as well. But how do I know that pH is going to stay stable, especially with like exposure to the air, because even oxygen might, change the pH slightly, or if I accidentally, drip some water in there or something, or other ingredients I might add in will affect the pH as well. So if I want to, like I said, add in a preservative or something. So Nimue use something called a buffer, which actually keeps the pH stable. So you know that from opening your product until you finish the product, there's always going to be the same pH. So what sorts of acids are we using then? So we know about the triple AHA complex. So I hope you can see it, the three main AHAs that we use there through all of the core range in bold. So glycolic, lactic, and citric acid. So there are other AHAs. You can see up there malic acid, mandelic. So we actually use mandelic in some of the SRC peels as well. So we do use others, but the main three that you're going to find in all of the core products is your glycolic, your lactic, and your citric. And we use those three in combination with each other because it gives the best result, basically. So for example, if I was to just put glycolic into a product, it's probably going to be quite irritating. There's very few products that we use that have just got glycolic, and I think it's literally only the glycolic peel that we make, which is a phase 3 peel. So the skin would be prepped, ready to have that applied. But we use the three in combination because that's just what we found was best or Nimue found was best when they were doing their initial research. So lactic acid is a little bit more moisturizing on the skin, and citric acid is a lot gentler. Citric acid is quite a big molecule, as you can see on the screen there, so it doesn't tend to travel as deeply into the skin. Whereas glycolic is smaller and will travel all the way through. So using all three of them in combination is going to give the maximum stimulation of the skin, so the most benefit, but with the least irritation then as well. So if you've got clients coming into you who maybe are a bit scared of using AHAs because they've perhaps used a glycolic wash or a glycolic toner before, we can say to them, well, actually with Nimue, we're using three acids in combination, and that basically minimises the irritation then of using glycolic on its own. And also we've got the buffers in there, so the pH is nice and stable. A lot of brands don't teach pH, which is quite strange, I think, because there's no point knowing, how much of a percentage of acid is in something unless you know the pH as well, because the pH will tell you, obviously how much potential that acid has got to actually do things to the skin. So why do we use AHAs then in combination? So benefits of AHAs in general then. So increasing collagen, elastin, and hyaluronic acid synthesis. So that's what everybody wants anyway, isn't it? I think aging is one of the main concerns, or the main concern that personally I have in my salon, is people coming in with wrinkles essentially and sun damage. So if anybody's got wrinkles on their skin, it's because of a collagen or elastin loss. If they're getting that loss in volume, that loss in plumpness and dewiness on the skin, that is a loss in hyaluronic acid or a loss in gags. So hyaluronic acid is a type of gag, so it's a molecule that holds a lot of water in the skin. So I think most people know of hyaluronic acid, so I tend to not use the term gag. So we use the term hyaluronic acid, so most people know what that is. It's just a molecule that holds a lot of water. And we want to, okay, we can apply hyaluronic acid topically to the skin if the client's lost some, but ideally you want to try and get the skin to make its own hyaluronic acid. So AHAs will do that. So after about 8 weeks on Nimue, client's going to see an increase in collagen, elastin, and hyaluronic acid synthesis. The skin's going to actually be making that for itself, which is super clever. Improvement in something called the reed ridge pattern. So I'll show you a picture of some reed ridges on the next slide in a sec. Dormant melanocytes activated. So with age, some people will get, dark spots and light spots on the skin, or an even skin tone. Particularly if they've been in the sun, they've got those sunspots there. You'll find that they'll be like the dark kind of freckly areas, but there'll also be lighter areas as well. So with age and with sun damage, some of the melanocytes that make the pigment will actually go dormant. They won't die completely unless somebody's burned themselves, for example, and they've got like a white scar, which is melanocytes totally eradicated. If they've just gone dormant, there'll be some lighter areas. So the AHAs will actually go to the melanocyte in the skin, and they will basically reactivate that dormant melanocyte. So you'll not only have the like fader range, for example, treating the darker areas and sort of lightening the pigmentation, you'll have your AHAs actually waking up those dormant melanocytes as well. So you will get this evening of the skin tone. So I hope I've explained that enough. So if I show you the unhealthy skin here, we've got one melanocyte and he's making too much pigment in one area. There might be another melanocyte over here that's not making any. So it's like this guy is compensating for this guy over here. So after a few weeks on AHAs, what you should find is that kind of balances out. So we'll wake up any dormant melanocyte cells with AHAs, and we'll also, exfoliate all of these compacted skin cells up here. So you're going to get a nice lightening and brightening of the skin. So there's your lovely healthy skin. So this one's obviously been treated with AHA. So we've got lots of gags down here. We've got the collagen and elastin. They're a lot more, they've got a lot more structure to them, and they're a lot stronger down here compared to here. You can see the cells are holding a lot of their own water, so you've got healthier barrier function. And we've got these ridges. So can we see here, this layer of skin cells is quite flat. So this is your basal layer. So this is the epidermis up here, and everything below the basal layer is your dermis. So this is quite flat here, and that's normal. So with age, you actually lose the dips. So in a younger skin, this will dip quite a lot. It almost looks like a roller coaster. It kind of goes like this, like a squiggle. And with age, that kind of flattens out. And the issue with that is then the epidermis can't talk to the dermis so well. So you get like less communication there. So say, for example, I'm putting a product on the skin and it goes all the way down here to the epidermis, to the basal layer of the epidermis, which is what Nimue definitely does. It will travel that far. Well, if there's less ridges, it can't communicate as well, because it's just like a flat, one layer talking to the other layer. Whereas if I've got lots of ridges, I get a lot more communication because it's like a bigger area to communicate across. So with AHAs, you actually see this increase in the ridge pattern. So that's super cool as well. So we really are reversing most of the things that go wrong with the skin with AHAs, which is why they're so clever and why Nimue use them as their backbone and their ethos. Do we have any questions about the benefits of acids or anything I've just talked about so far?
Nothing so far, Hannah. We have a quiet bunch tonight.
Okay, so that's just like a little sort of whistle-stop tour of acids, and we're focusing on those 3 AHAs. So let's have a little recap of phase 1. So where we might have some new stockists on this evening. I'm not going to spend too long on this. So hopefully we're all familiar with this. So when a client goes on to phase 1, which is their home care, so like your cleanser, your conditioner, your day and night preparations, they're going to see results over that initial 4 to 6 weeks of about 30%. And we get these numbers from all sorts of things that we measure. So it won't just be wrinkle depth and number of wrinkles. It'll be things like, number of pigmentation spots on the skin, number of blackheads, number of spots. So everything will get analysed and then obviously numbered. And then 4 to 6 weeks later, client gets back in, it's all measured again. So we're saying a 30% difference. So that's why you've got the plus and the minus there. So it depends on what you're measuring, really. So overall, 30% change. So some people will see more or less, depending on what their individual concern is. Because when I look at this, sometimes I think, oh, only 30% in that first 4 to 6 weeks, because most of my clients feel like they see a heck of a lot more. But it depends on what individual thing, is their concern and they're looking at, really. So overall, it's 30%. So that's your phase 1 products, and that 30% difference comes from those particular products, and they're at a pH 4.5. So again, we're sort of staying with the pH of the skin initially. We don't want to stimulate it too much. And then the concentration of acid actually in that phase 1, it's not on the slide here, but it's a 7%. So in the conditioner is your strongest phase 1 product, it'll be 7% AHA. So the conditioner is the one that's doing most of the work really in that phase 1. So 4 to 6 weeks on that, and then the client can progress on to phase 2 then, which is just adding in one extra product. So as we can see then, the pH comes down. So we're going more acidic, more potential hydrogen, and we're going down to a 3.5 then with that phase 2 product. So they're just adding that one extra product every other night underneath their night prep, or 2 to 3 times a week, depending on the client, will depend on how I word it to them when I'm trying to sell it to them. And then over that 2 to 4 weeks on phase 2 then, or phase 1 and 2, so they just add in the extra product, going to see a 20% difference. When they get on to phase 3, then they're going to see all of that change again. So it's almost like whatever they achieve on products alone, they can sort of double that result then by doing the phase 3 treatments as well. And we can see with the phase 3 peels, they're all a pH 3. So we're dropping the pH as we go through the phases, and that basically minimises the chance of irritating the skin and also maximises the results. I get so many clients come in who have seen that I do peels, for example, on Google, because they've searched skin peels in the area, and they want to come in and have one peel for acne, and they think that's going to solve all their problems. And actually it doesn't, so I have to come in and explain to the client, home care is absolutely essential to this process. And I might show them this circle. It is in the little booklet leaflets that we give out to clients. Because not only is, like I said, it minimises the chance of irritation with the peel to do all this prep work, but also that because the skin is going to be, holding a lot more water and it's got a lot more ridges in it after doing phase 1 and 2, they're going to see a better result from the peel anyway. I don't know if anybody remembers their first ever peel and maybe the result didn't last so long, whereas if you've been on Nimue long term and you do yourself a peel, you're going to see those results carrying on for a good few days after you have it. And that's just because the skin holds a heck of a lot more water and has got a lot more ridges there. So that's why we have the 3-phase system. So just recapping, just for maybe the newcomers, we've got some suggestions of your phase 1 and phase 2 prescriptions here. So most clients would fall into the environmental damage category, which is primarily aging, but it could be that they don't really fit into any other category. So they would go on their cleanser and conditioner, Nimue day and night, and obviously everybody gets an enzyme and an SPF. And then after 4 weeks, then you could progress them onto either active lotion or active gel, or we actually have the wipes now as well. So I'll be discussing those a little bit later. Very similar then, if somebody's pigmented, you would just change the moisturisers to day fader or a day fader and night fader, or they could go for the day fader, night fader plus if they are a little bit drier on the skin, because the day fader, night fader plus just a little bit richer. And the phase 2 product's obviously going to be the same. If they're problematic, their phase 1 is going to be your cleanser and conditioner, and then moisturiser light or Nimue day for the daytime, depending on how heavy a moisturiser they prefer. So obviously Nimue day is a little bit thicker. And you've got your purifier then for the evening. And obviously everything else is the same. So once you get used to prescribing with Nimue, I think it's actually quite easy. It's really the moisturisers that are different for every prescription. And then I will discuss interactive, even though interactive isn't really a phase 1. So I've put on the slide there pre-phase 1. Because this would be what a client would use before they'd move on to AHA. So your light products, your cleansing gel light, your conditioner light, are all PHA based rather than AHA. And that basically means that they're just weaker. So PHAs are a lot bigger, as we saw on the slide earlier. So PHAs don't quite go into the skin as deeply. So they're going to get a little bit of a result for things like aging and exfoliation and even skin tone pigmentation with the PHA, but nowhere near the level they will with an AHA. So we think of this as like a pre-phase 1. It's really going to prep the skin ready for moving on to AHAs eventually. So they go on to the light range, so the cleansing gel light, conditioner light, moisturiser light. They could use element barrier if they want something a little bit thicker for the day if the skin's quite dry, which usually I find it is with interactive skins. And they'd obviously have their exfoliator and their SPF, but they'd stay on that at least 4 weeks really before progressing on to one of the other ranges. So I would just skin classify them at the 4-week point and then move them on to one of the other ranges just very, very gradually. So I might change the cleanser first and then after a few weeks look at changing the moisturiser. So it just takes a lot longer with interactive to progress onto phase 1, but there's nothing stopping them progressing fully onto phase 1. Once they're on phase 1 with conditioner for 4 weeks, you move them on to phase 2 like you would anybody else. Do we have any questions about that before I move
on? Not so far, Hannah. I think people are pretty engaged with the material.
Okay. Maybe I'll do a little quiz at the end, we'll see.
Indeed.
All right then, so moving somebody on to phase 2 then. So once they've been on the full strength with the conditioner, which is 7% AHA, once they've done that for 4 weeks, twice a day, at least, you're going to move them on to phase 2. So we can see the differences in the concentration and strength here. So this is quite nice. So phase 1 is like 7%, like I said, with the conditioner. And then 4.5 would be the lowest pH we drop to on phase 1. Phase 2, then we're going up to 10% with the acids. So you're going to see extra results there, which is why we only do it a couple of times a week underneath the night cream. And we only do it at night because there's no way you want to put a 10% product on during the day. Because you're going to be going out in the sun and sensitizing the skin. pH 3.5 in your phase 2, and you can see with your phase 3 I'm going up to 15% pH 3. Now this up to 15% is only applicable to bioactive or the active rejuvenation peel, which is the one that you learn on core. Anything that you train in above and beyond that, then that you're going to be actually increasing in percentage, but still on a pH 3. Because pH 3 is what we call the golden pH. So it means it's the maximum stimulation of the skin with the minimal irritations. That's why we use pH 3 for all of our phase 3 peels, bar 1, that I'll discuss a bit later. So I've put this slide in because I think it's important to know when you are progressing a client on to phase 2, that they can go through a transitional period, similar to what they do or can do when they go on to phase 1. So hopefully we know about the transitional period already. So symptoms that we're going to see, if I just show you on the next slide, will be things like potential breakouts coming out to the surface, oiliness or dryness, depending on the person. The pigmentation may appear darker initially. They may go slightly more sensitive initially, or the capillaries and redness might actually become worse initially because of the increased blood flow. So all of this is normal, and it's because the products go much deeper into the skin with Nimue. So you'll find that it will stimulate the immune system. So they'll be thinking, oh my gosh, what's this going on the skin? It's not used to it. So you'll get that increased blood flow. So again, that might make the skin more oily or dry, depending on the person. But the reason that breakouts or underlying congestion comes out is not just because the immune system's stimulated. It's also, I think of it as, the AHAs are going to try and increase the cell turnover. So they're almost exfoliating the skin, even though they're exfoliating it chemically, not physically abrading it. So I explained to the client, like, look, any kind of spots that you may get. So maybe if you get, I don't know, 1 spot a month at the moment, when you first go onto Nimue, the cell turnover is going to be higher. So you might get 4 spots coming out. You might get like the next few months spots coming out all in one go, which is good because it means that the product's trying to get the congestion to come out of the skin. They might not see it as a good thing, but obviously because the products are increasing cell turnover, eventually once all that congestion is out, and particularly if they're going to have some peels as well, and you get all that congestion out of the skin, then they're not going to get breakouts anymore. Or they're certainly not going to get them as often as they were before, because the chance of that follicle getting clogged is actually much, much lower once somebody's on Nimue. So that's the reason why some people see breakouts initially. I mean, it's really difficult, I find, to predict whether a client's going to go through this period or not. I'd say maybe 40% of my clients go through it when they first go onto Nimue. I don't know if anybody else who's been using Nimue for a long time and retailing Nimue for a long time has got any other stats that they might want to share in the chat there. But I'd say, yeah, less than 50% of people go through this. And it's really difficult, I find, to predict whether somebody's going to go through it or not. Because sometimes I think in the books and things, it says that maybe clients who've never looked after their skin, maybe they've always used wet wipes, they're more likely to go through it because the skin's not used to having these actives on it. But actually, I got a client onto Nimue the other week who's a wet wipe client, and she's now 40, and she's decided she's just all of a sudden going to look after her skin. And she started seeing results from day one. She hasn't had any transition whatsoever. So I find it sometimes really, really difficult to call. But yeah, it is a positive thing because we know that Nimue is working that much deeper in the skin. So it can come out from 2 to 4 weeks after starting Nimue. So some clients get like a delayed transition. It may continue for 4 to 6 weeks, but the longest personally I've ever seen is a client transitioning for 3 weeks, and then they just wake up one day and their skin's like amazing. And so that happened to me actually on phase 2. So when I first went on to Nimue phase 1, I didn't really have a transition. My skin just went a tiny bit dry for a few days, which was fine because my skin was super oily before, so I'm problematic. But when I went on to phase 2 active gel, as soon as I introduced that at the 4-week mark, I started breaking out every day, and in random places like temples, cheeks, or places I wouldn't normally break out. So I knew for sure it was the transition. I knew it was the product, and then 2 weeks later I just woke up one day and my skin felt like what it did on phase 1. So I knew I was definitely over that period, and needs to say I've had results ever since. I don't know if anybody's popped anything in the chat there, Gail, because I can't see it. If anybody's put any fun facts about the transitional period there.
I think people are just sort of absorbing a lot of this fascinating info so far.
Okay, lovely. But yeah, so if anybody wants to share, if you've been using Nimue for a while and you want to put some comments down about the transitional period, if you find your clients go through this or not. Obviously, I have got a lot of Nimue clients, but it is just me working in my place. I haven't got any staff or anything, so but I have been working with it for 4 years. So I'd say, yeah, about 40% of people, I'd say, go through this. But not many on phase 2, but it can happen, just so we're aware. Right, so let's have a look at some phase 2 products then. So there's a choice of active lotion or active gel. So we do have the resurfacing wipes as well now. So I will just pop that into this section because you could use these as an alternative to the actives if you wanted to, but I find clients tend to pick the refillable active gel or active lotions as a little bit more cost effective. So both of them are 10%, the active lotion and the active gel, and they're pH 3.5, and they just apply this every second night under their prescribed night cream. So because they may go through a transition, you might want to recommend that they only do it maybe once or twice a week to start with and gradually build it up. It's entirely up to them. I tend to just say, look, apply it every other night under your moisturizer, and then obviously if you are experiencing a transition and you're really, really struggling with it, like you really can't cope, then maybe reduce down to twice a week and then increase back up later once you feel like you're over it. So you've got your lovely amphoteric AHA complex in there. So it's those 3 acids that's through the whole of the core range, which is citric, lactic, and your glycolic acid. And we say amphoteric because that's one of the delivery systems that we have that minimizes irritation. So it just makes the acids go more slowly into the skin. So you've got the lotion, which I tend to prescribe for the drier skins, or if they're more oily or they don't have a preference, then I tend to put them on the gel. I say if they don't have a preference because in theory, the gel may be ever so slightly stronger because you've got your willow bark extract in there as well. So willow bark extract is a natural source of salicylic acid, which is not an AHA, it's a BHA, but it's quite good for oily skins, and it's quite good for congested skins because it can actually work inside the follicle to like decongesting the follicle there. So definitely if the skin is oily or problematic, I'd always steer them towards the gel. But the reason that we've actually put willow bark in this as opposed to salicylic acid on its own is because we can't put salicylic acid in a 10% product. 10% is the maximum AHA that or maximum acid content that we're allowed to use in a retail product. So it was impossible really to put the salicylic in this. We kind of got around that a little bit by putting willow bark in there instead. So in theory, it's a little bit stronger than the lotion if somebody wanted, extra results and the skin was quite tolerant, or they don't have a preference between lotion and gel, I put them on this one. But certainly if the skin is dry, go for the lotion. So those are the 2 choices then, but they could also opt for the wipes now as well, because these are new. So we've got the active resurfacing wipes, which come in a box of 16, and they're on pH 3.5, and they use them exactly in the same way, really. It's just that it's in a wipe form. So 2 to 3 times a week, wipe over after cleansing, and then they follow with their prescribed night cream. Now, the reason why somebody would pick this and the benefits over the packaged product is, one, it's really good for traveling, so maybe if they go away a lot or go to the gym a lot, that type of thing. They can actually be introduced from phase 1. So if you've got a client whose skin is quite tolerant, so for example, my client I just said about with the wet wipes, she's started using the product, results straight away, no transition whatsoever. If she wanted to start using these now, during that first 4 to 6 weeks, I would absolutely give her, I've actually got an open box of these in the salon. I just tend to give one out if I think somebody would be suitable for them. And more often than not, they buy them then. So, it's a good little tip for if you're struggling to retail these. And I give clients the choice then as to whether they want to purchase these or the active lotion, active gel. Some people have both. Once they've seen the benefits of these, they'll buy both. I quite like them because there's enough product in the wipe to actually wipe over like the backs of hands as well. And also like definitely enough to do the neck and the chest. Some people I think get not so much lazy, but a little bit complacent with their phase 1 and they stop taking it down. You can see when you do them a phase 3 peel, then the whole of the chest going bright red because the skin's just not used to the ingredients there. So if they can get that wipe on it, then that obviously makes that happen a lot less. And they obviously see a lot more results there as well. So a lot of people have sun damage on their chest. So the reason that we can use these from phase 1, even though they're 10%, is because you've got allantoin and panthenol in there, which are quite soothing ingredients, and they're quite, barrier repair ingredients as well. So if you think that the skin is suitable in phase 1, then by all means introduce it then. If you're not sure, then just introduce them phase 2 as you normally would with your active lotion, active gel. Do we have any questions about those products?
We don't have any questions. We do have a little bit of feedback from Teresa Bloor, who says an occasional client does transition for longer than 6 weeks, but have found they weren't following the recommended procedure properly.
Okay, that's interesting. Lovely. I've never had somebody breaking out or going through transition for that long, so that makes sense if they're not doing it properly. I'm just really curious now. Can I ask what she was doing that was incorrect? Was she not using stuff as often as what she should be? I have actually had one client once use their phase 2 product too often. She thought she had to use it every night. God knows why. So I write everything down for my clients on an email. and obviously she was breaking out a heck of a lot more because the skin was just not accepting it whatsoever. So almost like using it too much can lead to increased transition as well. So it'd be interesting to know what Teresa's client was doing to get transition for 6 weeks.
I think she said she says she wasn't using SPF.
Ah, interesting. Yes, because obviously the skin will definitely be more sensitive to light on this. And I think
she also says I needed to slow down with the conditioner use as well. Which
okay. Yeah, so yeah, the general kind of advice that we give if somebody is struggling with transition is to reduce the use of those most active products. So if it's a transition in phase 2, they reduce their phase 2 product. If it's a transition in phase 1, they reduce the conditioner. So I've had some clients where I've told them, just stop using conditioner, literally just use conditioner, say once a week, and use it dilute on wet gauze or wet cotton pads. So you're diluting it a little bit and almost kind of pat it on, see how the skin likes that. Should be fine if they're doing it that way, just once per week, and then obviously they'd increase that to twice a week, and then once they get to the point where they're doing it every other night, then gradually switch to dry cotton then. So yeah, there are ways to lessen it, but ultimately, I feel like saying to clients, the congestion's got to come out anyway. So personally, when I was on phase 2 and I was breaking out all the time, I just carried on as normal, just accepted the breakouts, and then just knew that I would eventually get over that period. So rather than extending the length of time that goes on for, I just kind of shortened it. But everybody's different in the way that they want to try and manage it. Some people really can't cope with breaking out, can they? They really, really can't cope with extra breakouts. So I've got actually one client who, even after a year, is still transitioning because she just will not, she just cannot accept the fact that she just will have extra breakouts. So she's only actually using her cleanser on her forehead at the moment. And I'm really struggling with her. She comes in for microneedling. I think that you've really got to just get on these products now and just sort of grit your teeth and just get through it. She was working from home all over COVID as well, so I don't know what that was about. She could have easily just sort of hidden away for a few weeks and gotten over it. But I said to her, look, it's been a year now and you're still breaking out. We could have got you to the stage where your skin is amazing if you just do what I tell you to do. But yeah, clients can be funny.
She does say there's a happy ending. The client loves her full phase 1 and 2, and because now she's using them properly, basically.
Yeah, right. Not like my client, who I'm still telling off because she's only using her cleanser on her forehead after a year.
We do have one question, Hannah. If a client has oily and dry skin, what phase 1 should you put them on?
Phase 2, is it?
She's saying if a client has oily and dry skin, so not specifically problematic, I think Quiva is suggesting, what phase 1 should you put them on?
Phase 1. So phase 1, well, the first thing I would do is rule out any sensitivity. If there's any sensitivity at all, they definitely want to go on interactive. If there's no sensitivity there, you just go with whatever the primary concern is for that client. So if you're saying the primary concern is oiliness and dryness, I would put them on environmental damage because they don't really fit into any other category. They don't really fit into pigmentation or problematic. So it would be ED, providing they're not sensitive. Hope that answers your question.
I think so.
Yeah. Let me know if I've understood it right. Yeah. So if the main concern, if that is the main concern, is oiliness and dryness, then yeah, it would be environmental damage. But say always rule out sensitivity first, and then if you're still struggling, they do end up usually being environmental damage if they don't really fit into any of the other 3. Okay, let's move on. We've got some supplementary phase 2 products here as well. So once a client's done that initial 4 weeks, they've got some extra products that they could potentially go on if they are wanting extra results really from their routine. Or also there are some products that are only suitable once they've completed phase 1. So we'll talk about those as well. So we've got the Therma Flash Peel. So this is like an additive phase 2 product. So they'd buy their, active lotion, active gel, or their wipes, whichever one they want to go for. And this could be added in as an extra treatment then once a week. So it's a Therma Flash Peel. Hopefully most of you have tried this already. It's replacing the old glyco mask that we used to have. So it's still in the nice clay base, but this is in a much bigger tube. So it's a 30ml tube. And as well as having the glycolic acid in there, we've got salicylic acid, so it's super good for congested skins and breakouts. We've got sorghum bicolor storage, which is really good for firming the skin. We've got your thermal complex. This mask does indeed warm up, similar to a thermal detox peel. It just gives that extra blood flow without irritating too much. So we just get extra results from the extra blood flow. And we've got allantoin in there as well. So again, that is in your wipes. So it just makes it that little bit more soothing. So even though this is a phase 2 and it's a 10%, only use at night, they're not going to get as much irritation from it as what you'd expect. In fact, I'd say no irritation whatsoever. I use this myself maybe once a fortnight or so, because I'm just super limited on time, basically. I hardly ever do my own treatments. So I have got this at home and I absolutely love it, because as well as treating my sort of oily kind of congested areas down here, I find that anywhere that's quite dry is really, really moisturised with this as well, because of the allantoin that's in there. So they just apply this once a week at night. So they cleanse their skin and condition like they normally would for their evening routine. Pop this on, ideally with a brush. I tend to sell this with the little brushes that we can buy from S2. Leave it on for 10 minutes and then rinse it off. And they can just go on with their normal night cream then, whatever they've been prescribed afterwards. Or if they're feeling like maybe the skin's a little bit hot afterwards, you could just recommend they apply Element Barrier or TDS, or maybe some hyaluronic ultra filler or something that's not AHA based. Just go on afterwards, just like a barrier repair, something that's just a little bit moisturizing. So something like TDS barrier or hyaluronic ultra filler I sometimes use, because that's what I've got in my makeup bag. Such a thermoflash. And then the wipes we talked about as well. So I've put these in the supplementary section as well, because they could be as an add-on to your active lotion, active gel, or they could be instead of. So that's quite a versatile product there. I'm going to talk about alpha lipoic next, because alpha lipoic isn't a phase 2 asset. It doesn't replace your active lotion, active gel, but you can only introduce alpha lipoic after somebody's completed phase 1 because of the strength of the acids that are in there. Alpha lipoic acid, even though it's not an AHA, it doesn't work in that way. It's an antioxidant product. It is quite acidic and it is quite strong. So you will feel with this product, those of you who've maybe not tried it yet, when you first put this on, it does feel quite tingly, because of the alpha lipoic in there. So this one is a booster. So we have other boosters as well in the same kind of airless serum packaging. So I thought I'd lost you for a second. And you've also got the DMAE, which is a firming ingredient. So DMAE is found naturally in fish, actually, but we don't take it from there because we're vegan, so we have it synthetically made. And it's it kind of it improves muscle tone, if you like. So it's super duper great for clients who've got that kind of sagging skin. And because it's a super antioxidant in the alpha lipoic, they get a really nice brightening with this one. Also really good for clients who are very environmentally damaged. So maybe clients who have got like free radical damage. So things like smoking, pollution, unhealthy lifestyle, like me. Maybe they drink too much. I'm not a smoker, but I certainly eat the wrong things and don't look after myself in the way that I should. So you've got the statement from the client there. I make unhealthy lifestyle choices. I need to prevent my skin from aging prematurely. So anything that creates free radicals, this is amazing for anybody who is like a sun worshipper. They're going to enjoy this as well. Do we have any questions about the alpha lipoic?
Nothing at the moment. Can I just ask everybody to mute themselves if possible as well? Thank you. Nothing at the moment, Anna.
Bear with me a second. I do apologise. That was my children having a bit of a wrestle outside my door. Right. Any questions about alpha lipoic?
We have one question actually from Lisa, Hannah. Is it right you can't use alpha lipoic with skin refirmer?
That's right. Yeah, so that's actually on my next slide here. So say, for example, somebody wants to buy Skin Reformer because they get that sort of Botox effect with it. So it's quite a popular product. They can't use this in the same application. So one kind of counteracts the other because the DMAE is trying to tighten the muscle, whereas the Skin Reformer is trying to relax it. So they can certainly buy both, but they wouldn't be able to use them in the same application. So I tend to recommend clients use the Reformer in the day and the Alpha Lipoic at night, or they could alternate days if they wanted to. It's entirely up to them, really. But the reason I say Skin Reformer in the day and Alpha Lipoic at night is because with the Skin Reformer trying to relax muscles and expression, like, that's kind of more needed in the day, I would say, because you're not really going to frown. Well, you might frown in your sleep, but nobody's looking at you, are they? So that's the rationale behind that.
Excellent.
Any other questions?
Lisa just said that's fantastic to know. Two of our fave products.
Yes, so you can. There's nothing stopping a client buying both. That's fine. Just don't use them at the same time. Right, so the other thing that I've put in the supplementary phase 2 products here is the multi-rejuvenating serum. I mean, it's not specified anywhere, I don't think. It might maybe be in the manual or the toolkit, one or the other, about it being from phase 2. And I think there was a little bit of it was a bit ambiguous, I think, when I first did this masterclass, which was phase 2 the first time around. So personally, I only use this from phase 2, because if you look, it's a pH 3. So it is quite strong, and I have had clients transition with this. So clients who've been on Nimue maybe phase 1 and 2 for a long time, and then they've introduced this maybe later, and they've still broken out when they first got on it. So it is quite a strong product. So just be aware of that. I mean, I'm not saying it's officially got to be introduced in phase 2. You might have a client who can accept it, but just be aware that it is a strong product. So personally, I like to get my clients on phase 1 established first before introducing this. So make sure transition's completely over and then introduce this guy. So this one is a vitamin C, and you've got some peptides in there as well, in a nano emulsion. So it's got that delivery system in there. So it's going to go much deeper into the skin than, for example, another vitamin C product that might be on the market. I think those of you who came on the workshop, masterclass, a few weeks ago on collagen production. So this one's particularly good for that, because you need vitamin C to make collagen, and you need peptides as well. So I'd say the type of client that you want to put on this one is, there we go, the statement's there. So the skin is dull, has lines and wrinkles, some age spots starting to appear. So the age spots, it's like you have mild kind of sun damage, mild freckling. The vitamin C is going to help with that, because it is like a melanin inhibitor, like a tyrosinase inhibitor. And obviously you've got the increase in collagen production there as well. So good for, I should have put a picture of actually somebody who's got maybe, like, you can just see they've been in the sun, they've got some fine lines, wrinkles, some fine freckling there. Any questions about that one?
Nothing so far, Hannah.
Okay, then, so just a little recap then. So we've talked about phase 1, we've talked about phase 2. So I just got a very short section then on phase 3. So obviously this evening we're focusing on mainly on the phase 2. So just got a little overview of phase 3 next then. So we're dropping down to pH 3, and obviously you're going to see that 50% improvement there. So I've put thermal detox peel with a star. Thermal detox peel is not a phase 3 product. They can have that at any stage, even as a walk-in client, and they can actually buy this in the little kits for home use now as well. But I've put it on the slide there because I just wanted to show in like a row, the strength of all the different peels that we have. So we've got thermal detox being the weakest, and then obviously they go bioactive, glycolic stronger, SRC is stronger, and smart surface is the strongest. So as we go down the screen, they're increasing in strength there. So thermal detox can be introduced at any stage. I like this one as like an introduction to Nimue. If you've got a walk-in client who really wants a peel on that particular day that they've walked in, or anybody maybe whose skin's a little bit too sensitive, maybe they're an interactive client, they can have a thermal detox peel, providing there's no visible rashes on the skin. So you wouldn't be able to do it if somebody had active eczema or dermatitis there. And then your phase 3 then, so all of these in bold here. So we've got bioactive, which obviously all of us can do because we're all stockists. And then as we go through then, we increase in strength. So we've got your glycolic, which is a 35%, and that's on a pH 3, as all of these are. So that's glycolic, really good for things like sun damage. Somebody's skin's quite leathery. leathery looking, if that's the right word to use. So it's particularly good for that. It's quite a plumping peel as well, I find, the glycolic. Moving even stronger again than a more specialised would be your SRC. So there's an SRC for environmental damage, an SRC for hyperpigmentation, and an SRC for problematic. So they are blended acids. So depending on what the client's concern is, there's a specific blend of acids in there, which is quite nice if you have got clients who are problematic or hyperpigmented, I find, because it's just tailored to their particular concerns. So the problematic one, for example, has got more salicylic acid in there for decongesting. Hyperpigmented has got more of your mandelic acid in there, which is like goes quite deep into the skin but is less inflammatory, so it's less likely to trigger off any pigmentation. So I like those for those particular clients. If you want something that's a little bit more specialized, is these two here. And then even stronger again is your oil-based smart resurfacer. So these three here would be on a pH 3, so that's your maximum stimulation, minimum irritation. This one, because it's even stronger again, I wanted to use really, really low pKa acids that split quite easily when they're mixed with water. We couldn't really do that without making the peel too irritating, if you like. So smart resurfacer, if you've not trained in that yet, is on an oil base, and that basically means that the acid doesn't split as well, because it's dissolved in oil and not in water. So that's quite nice, because it means that you can actually treat the skin with these stronger acids, but you don't get the irritation that you'd expect. So you'd lay like the oil layer over the skin for however much time it says in your toolkit, depending on how many layers you're doing, depending on the client's reaction to it. And then when you take it off with water at the end, you feel like more of a kind of a sting, or not a burn, but you feel that heat for sure when the water goes on to rinse it off at the end, because that's when the acids literally react with the water that you're using to remove it. So that's quite interesting, and I think that those of you who've experienced that when you've had a smart resurfacer, that explains that phenomenon there. Do we have any questions about phase 3?
No, Nadine Jones does say she needs to introduce it into her own skincare though, so just
she needs to introduce them into her own.
It needs to introduce, I think she was referring to the alpha lipoic, basically.
Ah, right, okay. Yeah, alpha lipoic is lovely if you are, if you know that your skin is just that bit dull and just not doing what it's supposed to do, and it's just because of your lifestyle, really. I know it is. I need to use it more often, actually. I just tend to use it on the test stand when I remember to. I haven't got it at home. I just use it in the salon when I remember. Actually, the cool thing with this one is if you're not ready for this yet, maybe the skin's a little bit too, maybe hasn't completed phase 1 yet, we've got rejuvenating mask, which is my favorite mask. That's got the alpha lipoic in there, so they still get the nice brightening from it. But the alpha lipoic is obviously in there in a much lesser strength, less concentration. So if somebody wants the benefit of alpha lipoic, then rejuvenating mask is my favorite. And I actually use that for most of my facials as well, because it gives that really nice before and after result for a new client. Right, do we have any other questions?
No, just Nadine correcting me. She was actually suggesting using the multi-rejuvenating serum, as am I as well.
Oh, well, I've just talked about alpha lipoic for a minute, but that's fine. Hopefully you still benefit. And so, yeah, multi-rejuvenating, yeah, I think this is one that is used, it's not quite as popular as the alpha lipoic, but I think it still has its place. So I think if there's that little bit of sun damage there, I'd go for this one over the alpha lipoic. I think alpha lipoic's more like the daddy, for somebody, certainly for smokers, certainly for people who are just leading that unhealthy lifestyle. Okay, if there's no other questions, then I'll just put my finishing slide. If you think of any questions afterwards, you can contact your BDM or myself. So my social media links are below here. So we've got my Facebook, which is Hannah McAndrew Award-winning Skin and Nails. That's my client Facebook, but you are welcome to join me on there if you want to have a little look at any of the things I post for inspiration, for example. Feel free to copy any of the photos or the content on there. That's absolutely fine. And then we've got the Instagram then, which is more business to business. So if you've got a business page, you want to follow me on there, I'll follow you back. I've got the YouTube channel as well, which